Thanks, Bruce, for organizing this awesome conference. I see a lot of famous faces, and I'm glad they are here, but I'm more pleased to see new faces to become famous in the future, as you will be carrying this, this torch with us in the future. And as Bruce mentioned, we'll take this tour, this kind of show a bit around the world and how to get knowledge, especially that knowledge is driving transformation in the internet. And I just wanted to maybe show you a few names that have done some good job in the past. One of them is Jim Bound. Unfortunately, he left us a couple of years ago. And he knew very well that V6 is going to happen on the bigger side of the planet in Asia. And this is what's happening as well. But the message was, you know, if it happens in Asia, most probably the US will take it seriously, and this is what has happened. And this work has happened over the last 10 years. So some of the famous faces that are with us today, like Bob Hinn, I'll introduce him later on, and Tony Hain, that have designed IPv6, so people should maybe remember these faces. So I just put some of them here that you can look at them at your leisure later on. And we have from the V6 task force in the US, some of the famous faces that you should try to meet or talk to or put on your Facebook in order to have direct access to their knowledge. As well as from Europe, we have at least two here, Jordi and Sylvia. So it's good to remember these names. So maybe to prepare the road for Bob, just to give you prior to IPv6. So the internet basically started back in '69 on a protocol that had only 2 to the power of 8 addresses, so that's 256. So it didn't take much time to be depleted. Then NCP, TCP/IP have been introduced in '81. And then there was a jump back in '93. Can anyone tell me why the jump happened? In '93, there was a jump all of a sudden.
Public access.
Who invented the internet in the US? Right, that's what happened, okay? So he's taking credit for that. And then, yes, and then came the web, as you mentioned. And so at that time, it was very good to start with V6 because there was not much users on the internet. So what did we use before the IPv4 stack has been added to Windows 95? Which stack was that? I just want to get you a bit awake in this discussion. So what kind of stack have we used? I don't think I see anyone below 16 here, so that's correct. But what kind of software? Which stack was there? What was WinSock, right. Who invented WinSock? Well, the company is Trumpet, and the name of the gentleman is? So somebody from Australia here? Bob, you should know his name. Peter Tatum is the inventor of WinSock in Perth. Without that gentleman at the outskirts of Australia, you would not have had access to the internet. So it's amazing how people are way out of this world, invent something that has changed the internet. So Microsoft did not invent the internet, but they added that same stack. I don't know whether he has followed their steps. And Peter was also in the group of Bob Hinn and Steve Deering to design IPv6. So these are some milestones that you should be aware of in order to know what happened. So V6 was released. I'll leave that talk to Bob Hinn later on. And the V6 forum was created to get IPv6 out of the standard group and then to get the entire world to get to know it, primarily government, industry, and all kinds of stakeholders that are interested in this thing. So this took about 30 years of work. And still we are running after IPv6. But that's quite normal to get to these things. So if I look at the first transition plan that many of us have forgotten is RFC 801 from John Postel when he designed the transition from NCP to TCP/IP. And he had a very clear plan from January 82 until 1st of 83, and nobody followed it. All right, so even until mid-83, email functioned somehow. Yeah, so you had only about 50 people working on it, maybe 100, and half of them didn't know that the transition had to happen. So you can imagine now we have almost 2 billion people on the internet, and we're not going to convince everyone. So like Bruce said, knowledge is very important. So we have to educate people, and I have a few slides on this. One of the things that V6 didn't have is haters. V4 had many. Some of them are very known, like OSI with the protocol CLNP, which was pushed by the US government and the European governments, and they have used it from 92 until they decided that it was not that simple and stopped it in 94. Plus also things like UCP, Unix to Unix copy, which was pushed by Mike Odell as well as Rick Adams. They were kind of against V6 at a certain point of time, which they have converted into UUNet, which became the core of the internet on a worldwide basis. So these people have been kind of counterproductive to a certain point to the internet. But in the meantime, all of them have joined. And you've got some of the things that are going to change also that the US government has decided to adopt the IPv6 Forum V6 Ready Logo program and basically push the feared forklift upgrade that everyone has to do it. And the task of the IETF IPv6 task force and its previous V6 deployment working group led by Jim Bound and co-chaired by Bob Hinton, Bob Fink, and Steve Deering, and all the other guys, Tim Hain, and so on and so forth, we're quite clear that we have to push V6 now so that we get at least the first 10% to move to IPv6 in order to allow a certain transition, at least in the core networks, as well as in the most important networks to move to IPv6, so that we have a smooth transition. So at least we wanted to have something like 10%. Overall, we have about 25% penetration. The only thing missing is the access to service. And this is where the CPE part is not yet well done. And I think it's only a couple of months to go in order to get to that. So the biggest discovery we have found is that the enemy is the internet community itself. Right? And the reason for it is the knowledge that they know IPv4 so much that anything new is not going to be liked. So they will continue at perfecting IPv4 through NAT and through CGN and so on and so forth, because they know how it functions. So one of our tasks is to educate people to not only think with V4 mind, but also to start going into this thing. I go to many conferences, and whenever I put an IPv6 address on a slide, a lot of people get a shock. And that's not good for IPv6, because it's already a barrier. So how can you get people to adopt a V6 address without having that shock? Although the MAC address is also hexadecimal. But since it's hidden and nobody sees it, so it's accepted and nobody pays that much attention to it. So you would expect this kind of takeoff. We wanted to avoid this, but it's going to happen this way. Now, the good news is that the adoption V6 is happening, especially since 2007, at least for Europe, it's like this. And then APNIC. And on a worldwide basis, I think the trend is quite clear. So I think it's happening. So what we wanted to do is push more in the educational process and the readiness, be it for products, services, education, and so on and so forth. So in terms of products, I think we have done a very good job. So you have primarily all the vendors have adopted the IPv6 Ready Logo program. And this shows that the US is still ahead, although 10 years ago the US was #1 and there was no #2. So the new thing with IPv6 is that you've got plenty of #2 and 3 and 4. And the biggest surprise is China. So in the meantime, you have about 40 vendors doing the same thing like Cisco. Right? So this is something brand new. The next thing is we have found that in a study we have done for the European Commission that there are about 20 million people working on the internet infrastructure, and they need to be educated. So we tried to find out what's the incentive, to get these people on board. So we have created a number of programs, and in the last 8 weeks, so we have some of the first ones, like Cisco through Salman, who did yesterday the workshop. So basically, the courses of Cisco have been accepted as V6 ready, and the courses are behind the certification programs of Cisco. So CCNA, CCNP, and CCIE. Although these are certifications, they are not courses. Okay, so here we have to do a bit of work, and Salman is going to work on this, to take this to the next level, as well as the only university doing V6 courses with exams, and obviously one of the speakers that is sitting here in this room. So these are the golden stars that we have. So the list is very short, but we have to push it beyond this. But I think with Cisco, since it has one of the largest infrastructure for education, I think this is very good news. So also for the course at lower layer, so we have IPv6 now in Australia, and we have Kevin, who is with us, Kevin Cobb. Maybe you should talk to him. He has some excellent products, how to make V6 just without any transition, just software transition, so you don't have to invent anything or add any hardware into the equation to make it happen. Then the next thing is we've got some trainers. So it's quite obvious Jordi shows up as #1 in this, followed by the known names. So it's difficult to avoid these names. But we want to escalate this quite a bit, because this is not enough to educate 20 million people. Right? So that was the purpose of this program. So you will see a lot of requests that are coming to us. Some of them are quite astonishing. So Singtel from Singapore has asked us to put a plan to train about 3,000 people. So that's impossible to do. Then the Indian government has asked us to put a plan to train 350,000 people. So by creating such a program, people find, oh, this is what we have to do, and then they start thinking how these things can be done, and because you give them a certain program to do this. Then we have the web program, but I need to tell you one little joke here, because for that reason we have put this one. Just had the chance to meet Tim Berners-Lee, so I asked him, can you help us donate a quote for a press release that we want to do on the World Wide Web, that these websites should be V6 enabled. So he said, tell me what I need to do about this. I said, no, just add Quad A. He said, what is Quad A? So this is one of the best engineers on planet, and he didn't even know what Quad A is. So you can imagine, the other 20 million that need to work on this have to be educated as well. So education, really, knowledge is one of the biggest handicap. So we're still moving forward into getting more products to be properly done, especially SIP, IPsec, DHCP, SNMP. And we're quite surprised to see many vendors are keenly interested to find standards verification and feedback on their implementation, whether it's interoperable with other vendors and so on. And we do this work for free so far. And then we plan to add new ones, so like IPv6 enabled apps. So we're still working on this one. This idea came from Fred Baker. Then DNS, especially DNSSEC. So as you know, DNS is broken, so we have to fix it, and the only way to fix it is DNSSEC. So we'll have to do it for P4 and V6, and that will be a fundamental piece to do. And then with the introduction of the international DNS, we'll be able to add that. So most of the countries like Russia, China, the Arab countries have added IDN, and I think we should promote a program so that people are aware that you have to do that. Okay? So from the websites, we have about 100 million websites today. I think only 1% is supporting IPv6. So we've got a bit of work to be done there. So these are primarily the things I wanted to talk to you about, since Bruce has aligned some of the best speakers on planet. So I don't need to do their work. For the first time, I don't have to work anyway. So stay with us, and time will tell. Thank you.